Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and today we're going to talk about an RPG franchise that, honestly, you can judge by looking at it, has a legacy all of its own. Considering the fact that we're talking about the 8th in a franchise, currently up to 11 games in the franchise, not counting spin-offs and other things of that nature. But yes, we're talking about Dragon Quest VIII, Journey of the Cursed King. And it's actually apropos, or appropriate, so to speak, because I'm currently playing through Dragon Quest XI on my own on the Switch. I've played it twice. Dragon Quest VIII I've played about 5 or 6 different times, including the 3DS remake. And thank God for that remake, too, because it actually solves a couple of the issues I was going to talk about as far as this game goes. But, as always, we have to start by talking about Dragon Quest as a whole series. Now, Dragon Quest was originally known as Dragon Warrior until this game came out, and then much like Final Fantasy just became Final Fantasy VII, before that rigmarole of releases of like 4 and 6, Dragon Quest was known as Dragon Warrior, and now it is known as Dragon Quest, and has stayed as such. And thankfully, starting with 8, Dragon Quest has been released in America for perpetuity. And thank God, because I missed out on a lot of it. And they were nice enough to re-release a lot of the games on the DS and 3DS and other platforms and such. My favorite are 8, 11, and 5, give or take how I feel on each one. I think 5 personally, but 8 has such a soft spot because it was my first one, so, bear that in mind when I talk about it. And going back and rewatching a lot of the footage bears that out. It's not anything that will reinvent the wheel as far as the story goes, but the character interactions are really good, and it's Dragon Quest. The one thing you can say about Dragon Quest is when you've played a Dragon Quest game, you've played a Dragon Quest game. It doesn't try to change much, and it does in subtle ways as it goes along. I'd say it, gets rid of random encounters and whatnot, or has some quality of life things, or skill trees, or whatever, but at the end of the day, Dragon Quest is an RPG. It is a Japanese RPG, and it is very happy to stay in that realm. At least I sure as hell hope so, because I know they dabbled with like free movement in Dragon Quest XI, and it didn't work. So stay with turn-based. Please do what Persona does. Please do what Yakuza is doing now with like a dragon. Stay turn-based, please. I'm begging you, because Final Fantasy has proven, for better or most likely for worse, that trying to do an action-based thing in what is a turn-based genre doesn't always work out. If you want to do that, play a Tales game. If you want to play an action RPG, play Dot Hack or something else. Play Kingdom Hearts. If you want to play a turn-based RPG, play Dragon Quest. It works because they don't change it, and I hope they stay the course. They've dabbled in stuff like, MMOs and whatnot, but Dragon Quest is Dragon Quest. It's whimsical, it's fun. You know what you're in for. It's like cuddling up in front of a fireplace at Christmas time. You know there are conventions that must be adhered to, and thank God for that, because a lot of games could stand to, not change, when you've got a good thing going. I get it, you're trying to appeal to the large audience and whatever, but what about those people you alienate while trying to change, and you end up not serving anybody? Hello, Final Fantasy 12 and 13, I'm looking at you! But we'll talk about those on their other day. I'm going to stay in a happy place. I'm going to stay in a good place, and that good place is Dragon Quest VIII. And I will say as much, 2003 feels like so long ago. This was packaged in with, I believe, Final Fantasy X as a demo, or, Final Fantasy 11 or 12 in a demo or something. Oh my god, it's so good. it was one of those like the PS2 is long remembered as a fond console, and games like this are why. And for all my quirks about Star Ocean 3's plot twist and whatever, I still put that as part of the reason why PlayStation 2 is really good. Of course, Persona 3 and 4. You don't get games with that regularity anymore, it seems. But when we're talking about Dragon Quest, we also have to remember that in Japan versus America, there is a difference. In the US, it's fairly, it's a big deal, but it's a lot like Tales is. It's not like Final Fantasy where, oh my god, we're selling a ton of copies and it's amazing. I think it would because Square Enix is selling it, but I don't think Dragon Quest is that thing. But over in Japan, they have holidays whenever these games come out. Unofficial holidays. And it's so glorious. This franchise is so good, Yakuza's new main character, Ichiban Kasuga, thinks everything is Dragon Quest. And Yakuza 7 is Dragon Quest with gangsters. Like, how could you not love this? And I'm just in love with this franchise. And the fact that it took me this long to recognize it is a crying shame, because the more I talk about it, you can hear it in my voice. I am just in love with how simple and effective. This is what I grew up with, and this is what I want things to be. Like, as an RPG fan, this stuff, Persona, if you're gonna reinvent the wheel, reinvent, like, quality of life. Don't change the concept. The concepts make sense. If you're gonna change it, change the tone, or change the characters, or change the music up a little bit. But this is just good old-fashioned, turn-based RPG stuff, the way, well, Grandma used to have it. That sort of thing. That's what it feels like. We've had these for 30 years. There's no reason to screw around with it. But why am I so jazzed up about this? Why am I so happy about it? Well, part of it is due to when this came out, this was a first attempt at 3D. I mean, I think maybe in 7 or whatever they did it, but 8 was when it first kind of blossomed into this really expansive thing. They took advantage of the PS2 hardware. It's quaint now, but you go back to those other Dragon Quest games in 2D, and it's just like, it's weird. It's a change. And Dragon Quest 8 and 11 are kind of those modern ones. They feel like a 3D game. They feel like you're going through a world. And especially in the versions where you have no random encounters and enemies are on the field trying to chase you down, it feels like you're walking through the world, and it just works so well. So what does change between Dragon Quest entries? Not a whole lot, but the stories do change. And the story in this one, Journey of the Cursed King, has to do with the Curse of Trodain. Not specifically the land itself, but a scepter that was housed inside. There was a magical barrier, but a jester by the name of Dual Magus decided, I don't want to be shortchanged and looked down upon by people. They actually enhanced this in the remake, and they gave him a backstory further than before. But he goes into Trodain Castle under the guise of, hey, it's a party, it's a whatever, and then he steals a scepter. And then he just creates all this fucking mischief, these thorns and this stone, like everybody turns to stone and the entire place is captured in thorns, and a couple of people are transformed. And that's where we're left. The main character, however, ceases to be cursed. We are never understood why. He just avoids curses, I suppose. He's just God, I guess. I mean, you wouldn't be the main character if you didn't have that kind of power. And again, he's a silent protagonist, so what can you do? We just have the game to go on as far as his... I'm sure they've explained it, and he's a silent protagonist. He is plot armor. Deal with it. So they go about their merry way, and they are basically chasing Dual Magus down, and they get a couple of happy helpers once they help them out as well, and we'll go over the characters later. As they keep finding bodies left in Dual Magus's wake, they learn about the 7 sages and their heirs and the goal of Doommagus is not his own, actually. His goal is to destroy the seals on the scepter and then release the actual big bad, known as Rapthorn. And through shenanigans, well, of course Rapthorn exists, but while we're on that way, we come across the reason as why Trode and Medea being his daughter, King Trode and Princess Medea, they were the ones cursed. King Trode looks like a troll, like a mini little troll, almost like a goblin-like thing, and people were like scared shitless of him and don't know what to think. So he can't go out in public unless it's like a shithole city. Or one of the later cities that is actually like, hey, we live with monsters and stuff. Princess Medea has been turned into a horse. Great. But Medea will haul our stuff and, haul the carriage, and King Trode rides her and whatever. And it's weird, but it works. Because they explain who that character is, they explain who Trode is. All of the main characters get their day in the sun. And again, nothing's too out of the ordinary. I think Dragon Quest 5 and 11 tend to be a little more dark and a little bit more expressive with their storytelling. But the characters in this, as stock as they are, work. Except, of course, the main character, who is not a character. He is a dude in plot armor because he's a silent protagonist. But I will stop harping on that one day. But let it be known, silent protagonists are not characters. So, fuck it. Let's talk about characters that actually mean something. Let's start with Yangus. And while Dorkface and Trode and Medea were going through Trodain, they happened upon a bridge, and this guy was on it. He tried to do the whole troll on a bridge thing, and it caught up with him. But Dorkface said, hey, I will save your life. And then Yangus, trying to go straight as a thief, decided, hey, why not follow him? Not King Trode, but Dorkface, and he calls him Gov from now on. And I guess I'll stop calling him Dorkface, but maybe not. He is known as Gov in this game. Or 8, but I call him Dorkface, so I shall call him Dorkface. And in fact, that should be my title for every silent protagonist. So let's keep going. So Dorkface and whatever keep going. Couple cities later, as the game officially starts proper, they happen upon Jessica Albert in a town known as Alexandria. And Jessica Albert is a feisty Jasmine-type character. She's not one to be trifled with and held down by traditions and, arranged marriages and all this other bullcrap. And she leaves her home, leaves her high-standing noble family and says, hey, you guys are strong, why don't you help me? And then she ends up helping out as well. She's awesome. She's the female of the party. And they use that to their advantage. She's in a skimpy midriff with a nice skirt. And you can, go down a skill tree that focuses on her, sensuality, and they try to do that in cutscenes. It's not super overt unless it has to be. Dragon Quest is a little more demure with its sex appeal stuff, aside from the puff thing that ended up just being a in-joke, a slime joke. But, they have their fun here and there. But Jessica can use her sex appeal. She doesn't. She's more just feisty and attacks people with magic or a whip, if you prefer. Again, feisty. So they keep going, couple more areas in, and they happen upon Angelo. And Angelo is, for lack of a better term, Gambit in X-Men, except he has no superpowers. He's a suave, womanizing creep, but he's too suave for his own good, and you like him because of it. But he's a bit of a jerk too. They find him in a bar fight, honestly, because he cheats his way to a card game win, and he brings shame to Mayala Abbey, who is pretty much, not officially, but pretty much run by his half-brother Angelo, or Marcello, who absolutely hates him. The story is a nice little subplot. Of the main characters, these are Angelo's the one who gets the highest subplot. And his whole thing is Marcello was born of wedlock, and his dad hated him and whatever, and then he ended up leaving. Angelo ended up getting conceived later, but it was a thing where the main household decided to get rid of both Angelo and his mother and whatnot, and Marcello has this weird relationship with Angelo, he blames him for being thrown into the abbey and whatever, and he's a conniving asshole. Marcello is power hungry and vengeful and angry. Angelo kind of just takes it in stride, though there are moments where he's annoyed by it, and you see that, and it's one of the best side stories in the game is whenever they get to interact, because you don't get that a lot in Dragon Quest. A lot of inter character dynamics other than the plot of the day or the character of the day or the big bad, So Angelo always tries to hit on Jessica, but it's not overdone, At times it's just there. It's fun. In the 3DS version, they have a couple other main characters, but these 4 characters, including Dorkface, are your 4 party members. That does not change in the original version. You have those 4 characters, and that's who you're with. And hope and pray you like them, because goddamn, something they did do in the 3DS remake was add on Red, who is fond. No, Yankees is fond of her, and then Red kind of understands it and messes with him a little. She's a lot like Jessica if Jessica were a thief. Take Zidane from Final Fantasy IX, I guess, but turn him into a seedy, money-grubbing girl. She's a thief. She loves pageantry and she loves money, and she's just always doing stuff. In the original game, she doesn't do a whole lot, but in the remake, she's upgraded to a full-on main character midway through the game, which is cool because I think Dragon Quest needs as many characters as you can. At least 6 to 10 is a good a good amount. 6 to 8. If you go over 8 or if you go under 5 or 6, it tends to just be a little too little. Keep on going, and then you get another main character adjacent, known as Mori. And whoops, I had him mixed with Sylvando from 11, but they're pretty much the same character, except Mori's super old. But think of those super suave old guys who are super strong, But Mori is just this owner of this fighting pit. The main side quest of the game is a monster arena where you take monsters from in the overworld, team them together, and fight other ones. And he's just this Italian guy with this gusto. Is great. He's just fancy. He's got a scarf that constantly floats in the wind, even though there's no wind inside the building. But it flitters in the air because he's the most interesting man in the world. That's basically what he is. He's an owner of a fighting arena, but he's the most interesting man in the world. And I love the fact that they upgraded him as a character. You can only get him if you win his arena, but still. So those are your main party. Alongside them, but not main party members, are King Trode and Princess Medea. King Trode is a bit of a, "Oh, this is annoying, and why are you being so stupid?" The boorish king type, and he and Yangus always kind of come to blows, and he's a bit of a hoity-toity king, but he's got a heart to him on occasion. Princess Medea, midway through this game, can actually transform into her normal self, at least for a little while, and she's princess. she's princess girl. She's nice, but she's princess girl. There's not a whole lot there. She is a plot object, unfortunately. She likes the main character, and, that's fine and all, but she's just there. The main thing with her is that she is meant to be wed to a completely inept prince. If you thought King Trode was the boorish, annoying type, you haven't seen anything like Prince Charmels from Argonia. King Argonia is great. He's got this stern, like, why are you here? Why do I want to help you? But he feels like he's been in a battle, that ex-soldier type of king. Prince Charmels is just, oh, you are pathetic. Why won't you do what I ask you? Do what I say. And just that type of person. Except he's a Eric Cartman. He is Eric Cartman. It is sad. So yes, Dragon Quest effectively turned Eric Cartman into a prince, and that's as bad as it sounds. So that's Medea's whole thing. She is betrothed to this Eric Cartman guy, and she knows it and wants to get away from it, and then they build to Dorkface being somebody she actually likes. So, cool, I guess. But then you have them arching main villains. And villains plural. Dual Magus, a jester who stole the thing. Think Kefka if he's less emphatic and, not as murder hungry. He'll set fire here and there, but he's not completely balls out insane. He's just jester guy. But the actor they got for him is nice, and he says things like, such a pity, and he's a jester, and he looks like a jester, and he has his fun, and he fucks with people, and it's great. What's not so great is the actual main villain known as Rapthorn. And yeah, Rapthorn is a thing. But essentially he is controlling Dual Magus and whomever owns the staff. I say that because Dual Magus only lasts half the game, and then we realize it's been Rapthorn this whole time. It's one of those, oh my god, I was the boss all along, it's so great and all. You know that thing. It was supposed to be me all along, and it's dumb. But I'll do that when I do my rundown of negatives and positives. But yes, you have your characters, you have your setup, and as they're going along, you're doing your thing, and the main goal is to go from town to town and do different things, whether you're finding somebody's crystal ball, whether you're helping Prince Cartman with his stupid quest to find a heart that will give him like initiation rites and become a king and marry Princess Medea. You've got the 7 sages who, are being hunted by Dual Magus. You have Trode trying to find things like his sanctuary where he can go out to have a drink and not be accosted for being an ugly toad-looking thing. It's fun. It's fancy, it's fun, but it's nothing you've never seen before. But the characters make it work, if nothing else, and that's where it lies. And again, that also extends to its battle system. If you've played an RPG, you've played Dragon Quest. If you've played a turn-based RPG, you've played Dragon Quest. What does it do differently? Maybe a skill tree or two. Later Dragon Quest games have dabbled with class systems and changing classes, and mainly with 8 and 11, you have this, like, pick a weapon type. You get like 2 or 3 different weapon types, and then you get like a special skill, and you have to use every level up to use skill points to gain different skills. Some are better than others, and some are more useful in helping level up as others, but you fight a dude, you beat up a dude. You do some magic, you buff some magic, you debuff them, you do that stuff, and then you fight some bosses, and you keep going. If you're high level and you're good enough and you have the right strategy, you'll win. If you're not, you're going to get your ass kicked. You go to towns, you rest at inns, you revive at churches, because Zing only works half the time, if only whatever, that sort of thing. But there are traditions that Dragon Quest does that here or there have been established and have stayed canonically the same. The whole reviving at a church or whatever, that sort of thing. Saving at a church. They do autosaves here and there in later games, but yeah, save at a church, rest at an inn, fight it, that sort of stuff. Go here, do the plot of the day, keep going. It builds on itself. It's a 30 to 40 hour game. You know what you're in for, but sometimes that's all you want. And that's the good thing about Dragon Quest not really changing much, is when the next one comes out, I can say, okay, cool. And then there ever so often you'll have the games where maybe 8 doesn't have like the crazy side questy stuff or the darker stories that maybe 5 or 11 do, but they do just enough character-wise or story-wise that you start feeling good about yourself, and you're just like, I'm immersed in all this. I'm immersed in this simple battle system. I'm immersed in this visual style. I'm immersed in these music, because the music is fine, and it's always been kind of bleeps and bloops, but in 8, they did symphonic. They had an orchestral soundtrack, and I know in Dragon Quest 11 there was a big problem with it being made MIDI style, and then they had to do, for the new definitive edition, they had to have a symphonic, an orchestral version. Makes sense. I mean, you have the technology, you should be using that, but that's for its own thing. The other thing I will say about aesthetics is anybody who's played Dragon Quest will know it right away, because it's made come to life by Akira Toriyama, who did Dragon Ball. Yet again, I have to remind myself, I've never watched Dragon Ball. I watched like 10 minutes of it and then didn't get it. And now I'm going to lose all of my anime credibility. But what do you want from me? I also know he did Chrono Trigger. So, hey, if you've played Chrono Trigger, you pretty much know what Akira Toriyama stuff looks like. The characters look like they should. The characters act differently than Final Fantasy characters do, and I think that comes down to when they started doing voice acting, they started adding a European voice cast. That's why I'm not, doing the rundown of characters, like I always do, because I don't know who the actors are. They're a different crop of actors. So if you're looking for a different, subset of actors than like the AAA actors or the anime game actors or the anime actors in general, Dragon Quest has you covered. Stuff like Xenoblade has you covered because they go for the European style. They have a lot of weird hackneyed phrases that they throw in there. They try to, sometimes they'll try to have a Russian character. Sometimes they'll have to have a Japanese style character. But a majority of the time, it's those old school UK Cockney, oh, blimey! That sort of UK thick dialect, which I don't even know is a thing. But yeah, European and UK style actors dot this franchise, and it gives it its own identity. They also have character, and character place, places, names, enemy characters, enemy names are all puns on themselves. Like, oh man, I'm trying to remember. There's like slime names, and there's like Shaw Slime, and then there's other ones like Cruel Cumber, and oh god, I'm trying to, like, Cruel Cumber is the one that comes to mind. But there's like so many other good ones. There's like Jarvis, who was a boss in 11. I'm dotting around different franchises, but you get the idea. Like, this dragon with a jar is named Jarvis, and he's making pot puns, jar puns, because his name is Jarvis. That stuff. Or every little place has its own little unique quirk. It could be the ice level, or it could be the water level, it could be whatever. Again, Dragon Quest lives on tradition, and I'm really happy about that, and I really like that. The cool things about this game work. The characters, Yangus, Jessica, and Angelo, all worked well for each other. I think Red interacts off Yangus very well. Mori is just a hoot. Trode does his best and Medea's just there. But it gives you a goal. You want to see them come back to normal at least. I mean, yeah, I don't like Medea as a character, but I don't want her to be a horse for the rest of her life. You know, Dual Magus is a fine enough villain most of the time while he's there. You know, and Marcello's great. So the main characters are all amazing and fun. The soundtrack, I don't know, like the main theme while I'm going around the world, the battle themes, the you know, the sound effects, they all make sense. The getting the chests, all, you know, it's almost like Zelda, like they're just tradition. They don't change. They're not supposed to change. It's the way it's supposed to be with a rubber stamp on it, you know, that sort of thing. And all those things work. And the things that 8 does do differently. The monster arena. The monster arena is great. Having a skill set where you can have a playthrough where Dorkface is a swordsman and then all of a sudden he can use a spear in the second playthrough, or he uses his fists. You know, you could do stuff like that. The remake also answers a lot of questions I had with the PS2 version. They take the random encounters and then turn them into on-field encounters so I can run away at my leisure and make me super happy because I don't have to fight when I don't need to. They give Red and Mori characters in the party so you can add them as a replay value. You know, you can date Jessica as an ending. If you didn't want to work with Medea, you could choose to marry Jessica in the 3DS version. So the 3DS version is the better one because it adds things to it. In both versions, the other thing I really like is the monster arena, because not only do you get to have this whole side quest where you're getting monsters in your team, you can actually take that team and have them as an extra 2 or 3 turns in a fight, specifically a boss fight. And some of those higher level monsters can wreck face. And some of them are, like, you could take a metal slime, you could take a giant golem, you could take 3 giant golems and metamorphosize them into big Megazord golem guy. You can take these guys that have, like, double turns, like this dinosaur that has an axe that does 2 attacks. You know, it's cool. And the monster arena is great because then you can challenge yourself to pick a better team and, you know, get better items and then get Mori as your final party member. So the monster arena has in-battle consequences. It's got a side quest attached to it, and it's got a goal in mind. You know, it's so good. So I've been lavishing praise on Dragon Quest VIII this whole time, and I'm like loving this entire franchise. So there's got to be something wrong, and there is. And I'll start with the more Dragon Quest as a whole, because it is a fixture of it to stick to tradition. The thing I noticed about Dragon Quest, which is different than a lot of other games, is that they don't give you money for shit. I mean, when you're fighting, you get maybe, say for instance, when I was playing in 11, I was getting maybe 200 to 300 experience points per level. That's fine. But I was only getting about $50. If I wasn't stealing anything or I did get a good drop of an item, I'm done with $50. Unless I'm specifically fighting a certain monster that is designed to drop money, you're always going to be lacking funds. So whenever you go to the next town and have to experiment with, oh my god, I need better equipment, or oh my god, I need a better weapon or whatever, you have like 4 people that you have to account for, and you're almost never able to fully deck them out. I was able to do it just yesterday in a town that was 1 spot ahead, just because I was on a ship. I was able to go to a higher level area, get better items, and then I was able to forge some of the other ones and save money. But if you're so used to being able to stockpile items and whatever, like in a Final Fantasy game or some other game where you're able to equip everything, or if it takes maybe 10 minutes of grinding, it's fine. It could take you an hour to get better items and whatever. And it turns out that I don't think Dragon Quest wants you to do that. They want you to, like, re-up whenever you can. Like, you don't have to re-up items, and it's a quirk. It's a quirk that I don't know is specifically a negative, but it's not something I'm used to. I'm used to it now because that's kind of how it's been built. But if you're used to RPGs where they give you a lot of money, that's not this. Thankfully, they do drop money. Games like Final Fantasy XII or Xenosaga 2 or Final Fantasy VIII would be dumb, and they would have, oh, here's some money. You just have to fight for it. Here's some money. You have to get paid for it, like a salary. It's like, but what happened to monsters dropping gold? It always worked. So Dragon Quest does do that. It just doesn't expect you to actually get all the items all at once. And that's a thing that 8 does, and that's a thing that's more of a series quirk. I said before that the limiting party roster, I like the characters, but outside of changing them up a little bit, you have to stare at the same 4 dudes for the last 40 hours. At least in the 3DS remake, you get Red and Mori if you look for them. Red, I think, is mandatory, and Mori is if you do the monster arena. So there you get a little bit of leeway. But in that original PS2 version, you had 4 people. You had Dorkface, Yangus, Jessica, and Angelo. And you had to hope and pray you liked them as characters and as battle party, because you're not getting anybody else. So take it or leave it as it is. What I will say is my one drawback is Rapthorn in general. And he himself is not meant to be a threatening villain. I get that. But even when, I think it's one of those things where when the game knows you suck, you're not doing your job. Dual Magus, for all his quirks as a jester, still comes off as a threatening individual. He's got all that magic power because of Rapthorn's possessions and shit. But the problem I find is that you get rid of Dual Magus so quickly. He himself could have been a viable villain, and, we saw this with Kefka in Final Fantasy VI. Give them enough characterization, and their crazy, manipulative clown shit, can be a strong enough motivator to want to get rid of them. But you get rid of Dual Magus halfway, and then you find that the Scepter was the thing all along, and Rapthorn was the villain all along. So you go through this weird stretch where you're chasing one character, then you're chasing a different character, and then you're still chasing that same character, but now he's inhabiting a dog, and it's like, then you finally find him at the exact final dungeon, because they do the floating castle bullshit, because of course they do. And I don't even hate the floating castle thing. It's a cliche, whatever. But Rapthorn himself looks like a bug. He looks like a firefly. And for all of the 30 some hours that you've spent trying to chase this thing down, the first form, I do admit first, looks like a firefly. And he sounds like a fucking putz. Maybe that was by design. I don't know. It's like Zemus and Zeromus in 4. It's Final Fantasy 4. It's like, it was me all along. And it's like, I was fine with Golbez, thanks. So then you get rid of Rapthorn in the first bit, and then you find out his actual final boss form, and then you look at his final boss form. It's basically the genie Jafar from Aladdin, except he's fat. So it's like, what? You spent all this time chasing this jester who you physically seen like stabbing dudes and killing dudes and setting fires, and your final boss is a firefly and a fat genie. Kind of, I had to say it, because as much as I like Dragon Quest VIII, I mean, I had to say something bad about it, because I've lavished praise about it this entire time. So again, I don't think Dragon Quest as a series or as Dragon Quest VIII as a game is perfect. But I've said over and over and over, if you're looking for a traditional Japanese RPG, you might as well go with the first one. Or you might as well go with the first 10 Final Fantasy games. Because Final Fantasy decided to just smack itself in the head and try different things after that point, and I don't know. Dragon Quest at least decided to stay the course. SMT, Persona, Atelier, they decided to stay the course. And thank God that those still exist, because those are the games that I played and have still been playing. And that's what I think of when I think of an RPG game. If you're a fan of the Western style or the action style, that's great. Not every game has to be a turn-based RPG. I get that. But this is the type of stuff that I love. This is the type of stuff that I've spent 20 years playing and enjoying. And whenever I want to play a game, this is the kind of game I can dig into. And when they have characters with as much goodwill and with a strong narrative and a strong belief in what they're doing, it works. And then all you really have to do is work around the minutia of the battle system and make it look nice and feel nice, or do the Persona 5 thing and make it look like a fucking kaleidoscope of a Phantom Thief, heist movie or something. That sort of thing. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, and if nothing else, Dragon Quest has taught us that there's still an audience for this sort of thing, and it's called Dragon Quest for a reason. You know what you're getting. And yes, they've dabbled in stuff like Dragon Quest Builders and Dragon Quest Heroes, but they've stayed true to, at least when it comes time to do the mainline stuff, they haven't fucked with the formula like they do in Final Fantasy, and I hope and pray it stays that way. Because if all my praise of 8 and 11 and 5 and whatever, because we'll go into those games eventually, but you can see why this is the sort of thing that makes me happy. Because there are going to be times when games will not make me happy, but the majority of the time, Dragon Quest VIII is just fun. It's there. You know what you're getting into. You know what you're playing. It's confident in its identity, and it doesn't try to screw with you. You know what you're getting in for, and I think anybody who is a RPG fan or just starting to play RPGs, finding the 3DS version of 8 or looking up a YouTube thing or even getting out an old PS2 and playing this game, I would highly suggest it. There is not much wrong with Dragon Quest VIII, and you will definitely enjoy it. But that'll do it for me today. Next week will be Gankutsuo, the Count of Monte Cristo. Week after that will be Odin Sphere. And then after Odin Sphere will be Madoka Magica. Now, that is a tentative list, and I think I have a tentative list for things up until March and the Miku episode, which I'm again, really looking forward to actually doing a recording on, but that's not until March. I do have feelers out there for a couple people as far as guests go. We might have a different game in order instead, but for right now, Dragon Quest was today. We've got Odin Sphere next, and I think I want to do Star Ocean 3 at some point, and oh my god, do I want to talk about that plot twist. I don't want to remember the plot twist, but I could talk about it for days, if nothing else. And, whatever else the game did. But hey, I don't have to talk about that game. I don't have to talk about Final Fantasy XII. I had a fun time talking about Dragon Quest VIII. I had fun talking about Dragon Quest as a series. So I'm going to leave off in a positive mode, in a happy mode, and I'm going to wish you guys a good night. So, that's all from me, Citizen Strife, signing off.